So, yeah, let's get started.
Okay.
Can you introduce yourself for
Yeah,
us?
my name is John Divine Beers. Divine is from my stage name when I was in a punk band, and it was when I used to do a radio show here. And Beers is my real last name, so um, I just decided to keep all three. So
That works.
yeah,
So, tell us just a little bit about your past. I mean, you've worked in a lot of different places, so tell us a bit about that.
yeah. From my past, I used to go to school here at the University of Akron. Funny thing was at was a point in my life I was thinking about. I was coming back to school. I had gone to school here, and then left and lived out in Kent, worked out in Kent for a couple of years, and then my parents came to me, "Hey, you want to go back to school? We'll send you back to school." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then at the time I was thinking about being a minister, and I was actually considering going to this Franciscan college down in Steubenville. I had met this Catholic priest that I became good friends with, and so I got kind of drawn down there. But I literally was driving around on Route 8, and I was getting off at Cram Road, and I had been like, "Where should I go? Where should I go?" And I literally heard a voice say Akron University.
That's wild.
So somehow I ended up, I came back here, and I had a professor. I studied with Mark Sopelin, and I can't remember the other lady, but she was the one that got me to go into multimedia. And she had a student that had studied art. It turned out he was a sculptor, but went into multimedia and did graphics and learned to do all that. And then he was developing a course where he was going to bring multimedia students and art students together, and it was kind of like something that we were to teach each other how to do things. It was kind of cool, and I kind of was working with him, so that's how I ended up over at Gazetta Hall and doing the radio show. So, but that was mostly me just hanging out at the station, and I didn't really try out for the shows. I was just became friends with a lot of the DJs, and so I would hang out at their shows because I was learning how to run, how to do it.
Right.
And so eventually they couldn't do classes in that, so they asked me to take over their show. So I ended up doing a Monday night and a Tuesday night radio show. But the Tuesday night radio show was Bent Waves. It was a punk new wave show.
Right.
That's what I was more. So that's where I became Johnny Divine. So that's how Johnny Divine. But it was a throwback to me being a Jesus freak. I used to be a Jesus freak beforehand, so it was my stage name because of that. So
That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of history. So then how from there you've worked with a lot of like magazines and stuff as well.
yeah, I was writing for. I started out with Akron Venture magazine and a lot of local magazines, and I also published my own fanzine. The thing is the reason why I did that was because I was really poor, and so I figured the only way you could go see shows for free or get things for free is you publish your own magazine. And so that's how I started publishing my own fanzine then. And the first one was called Itch Magazine,
Okay.
or the Itch Zine. And so I used to get invited out to go into a lot of local shows and stuff.
Right.
So I was kind of a fixture in the local scene. And there was another guy that had he had a fanzine called Slam Magazine, in which it turned out, when he started it, it was basically going to be a calendar, but he and his buddy turned it into this fanzine, and we were kind of all doing the same thing, same thing. So it was really cool. And, it's all cut and paste. This is before computers and
Right.
stuff. This is where you have to cut out everything, or take X-Acto knives, and you take graph paper and you rubber cement it and all that stuff. But that's how I did it. And then other things I did was, I was working at the radio station, and then I would volunteer down at the Akron Civic Theater. And so I actually got to see Gary Newman
Wow.
on his Pleasure Principle tour, where he had the dancing pyramids and all that. That was amazing. That was a great show, and I was ushering them. That was the only way you can get, So
Right.
I volunteered to usher. It was awesome, it was just like that. But it's things like that was always happening to me, where it's like people would come to me and go, "Hey, you're on the radio, so can you manage us?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I would start managing bands, and then I got fired from this one band because I got him too many gigs. The guy didn't want to play out too much, so he fired me and the lead vocalist, and then Ron Mullins, who used to be in a band called Teacher's Pet, and then he and I formed a band. We called it the Tormentors, and then we got different. I sort of selected a bunch of people, and we got together and formed this band.
That's awesome.
And then we used to play down at the bank, and JB's down and all that. We were friends with F Models, and so we would always open for them. And actually, they had us once. We got to open for them up at the Mistake, or the Pop Shop, up in Cleveland, which I got to meet the Steve Bader's new band. I can't think of the name of it. It was before he did Lords of the New Church, so I got to meet Steve Bader's.
Right.
And the guy that ended up playing with Adam and the Ant was in his band, and a couple other things. So it was really. That was the epitome, the height of what we did. But we used to fight all the time on stage. That's what we were known for. So we were always, there would be fights breaking out on stage. That's what people came for.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
G.G. Allen vibes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I used to know G.G. Allen.
Really?
Yeah, he used to write to me. I never met him face to face, but he would write letters to me, and I have his singles that he sent me and signed.
That's
so
wild.
I have these. Yeah, I knew G.G. Allen through just because he knew about my fanzine,
Right.
and my fanzine was pretty well known at the time. Then later I formed was the other fanzine, and that started out as a music magazine for a local club. Never happened, so. It just started developing into this art music zine, and the last one I put out was in a plastic bag. I used to call it a bagazine, but it was like it would have I would have little booklets and stuff like that. So I did interviews and stuff and then I had postcards, I had stickers, I had buttons, I had cassette tape of all the bands I interviewed. And then if you pull out the booklets and you open it up, like paper cockroaches would fall out, all that stuff. It was like what I was starting to head towards, this art type thing, and it was interactive. So the idea was that you didn't just like thumb through it, and it was like you interacted with it. And this is way before computers and all that start coming out. So you're interacting with it, and I had things hidden in there, just things, all types of stuff. Codes. There was codes in there, just things and stories that were coded. It was all this. It was like art and different things. There was like a lot of influences at the time.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it was really fun. And then I got married, and no more bands, no more fanzines. I started writing for Alternative Press. I was writing for Alternative Press at that time too for a little bit, and I met him when he started out just as a local zine, and I helped him develop his paper and stuff, and then he kind of quit for a little bit, and then his grandmother gave him some money, and he came back and he went national with his magazine at that time. So from local to national, and I was married for about 8 years. The last thing, my ex-wife was like really into Pete Burns of Dead or Alive.
Right.
And I remember my friends got a video, and we watched the show, and I remember I stood up and I'm like, I'm going to interview him. Watch me. And everybody goes, "You're crazy." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." So I had this whole plan. I got my job back at Alternative Press. I started doing all that, and I literally planned out this interview.
That's so wild.
And was able to get it, but then Mike was vying for it too, but I was able to convince the girl that I was in, and then she said, would you like to do it over the phone, or would you like to do it in person? I'm like, oh, I want to do it in person. Well, he's going to be out in L.A. at this time, blah, blah, blah. So I had to go and kill my grandmother. and fake a death on my grandmother just to get 3 days of bereavement to fly out to California to interview him. And that was cool. That was really cool. And you took my friends, and we went and interviewed him, and we were supposed to only interview him for 30 minutes. I brought my wife along because she was like a big fan, and that was my present to her. And we were supposed to only do a 30-minute interview. We ended up staying with him for like over an hour. He held up like 2 TV shows or whatever that were out there, and we really hit it off. So when I came back, I wrote the article about him. But while I was out there, the whole rave scene was starting to happen out there. So my friends had other friends out there that kind of took us around to a couple of clubs. So I got to see the kind of the inklings of the rave scene out there. And so when I came back, we ended up getting a divorce a year later. And then next thing, within a year or so, I put together my first rave. And I brought it to Akron because I was going up to a lot of the raves up in Cleveland. I was hitting a lot of the clubs up in Cleveland. And that's how I started doing parties. So my first party was a rave, and it was called Unity, which we ended up throwing it out. We were going to have it at this, it's now the U-Haul off of Talmadge Avenue, but the Dink used to play there. That was their practicing. The guy was supposed to set us up that we were going to have that space, but then it turned out he didn't do it. So I had a friend who owned a rubber factory in Barberton, and so he says, "Hey, you can come use my space." So we had this rubber factory, and that's where we threw it. And
That's
it was
so cool.
Yeah, and it was like we brought together several club DJs that were supposedly like fighting against each other. So we brought them. That's why we call it Unity. We brought them together to perform that night.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's how we started. And the reason why I did it down here was because when I was going up to raves or whenever I went up to shows and stuff, I kept noticing people were from Akron and Cleveland. There was a lot more people in the crowd from Akron and Cleveland, and it was like this thing. Like I just noticed that, like, why are we going up here? We could just do it down here. So that's why I started doing it down here. So I started doing raves, and then I literally lost my job 2 days before I did my rave.
Wow.
Lost everything.
Oh,
Lost
no.
everything. It was just like lost my car, lost my job. Had to learn to use the bus, all that stuff. But it was the challenge. It started to become a challenge, and it was like I started challenging myself that I would just do these parties without a car. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have long distance on my phone. So it's like I just I would put together flyers and stuff like that and go out, literally like take a bus, go out and walk. And this is when record stores were around, so you hit all the record stores and hit all the places. And then if I needed to contact people up in Cleveland, I take the bus up to Richfield at the Holiday Inn at Richfield, and there was like banks of payphones, and I would just bring rolls of quarters and just spend 3 hours just making phone calls.
That's so funny.
And just getting everything set up. That's how I did the parties. I would do things where I wouldn't pay my rent for a couple months, and then you just threw the party. And then the idea was if I made money, I needed to break even at least.
At least.
And, so and that was enough to pay back my back rents and all that stuff. And then I did Unity, and then I did another show downtown Akron. At this place called the Diamond Grill, or not the Diamond Grill, not Diamond. I can't remember the name. It was a really, really eccentric restaurant. It was in an old jewelry store or something next to the bank.
That's
You know where the cilantro is?
Yeah.
It was around that. It was like cilantro, and then the bank was here, and then it was right next to the old bank.
All right.
And the bank had been closed by that time, and she had like a jazz bar upstairs. And so I don't know, somehow I started talking to her about doing a rave, and I had a friend who designed clothing. He was doing leather clothing, so like kind of like bondage type stuff.
Right.
And so I put together this party for him. So we did like this fashion show and stuff, And then I met these guys that did multimedia type stuff with TV and slides and all that stuff, and started using them. I think I heard about them on WNIR or something. That's how I met them. And so I was their first show that they did it at. They later on went on to doing clubs and stuff. And that was a great show. That one I actually made money. And there was a lot of ones that didn't make money.
That's
But,
how it goes.
yeah, there was like, but if I broke even, I broke even.
Right.
Most of the time I broke even.
That's good.
And then I did like an Easter one called Tricks at a roller rink over in town, which is no longer there. And it was fun. It was great to do those shows because it's like I was learning as I was doing them. I had no... I didn't used to I wasn't, I was a Jesus freak when I was
Right.
growing up. But I didn't like do parties. I didn't do like insane drinking parties, or I didn't do that stuff. And even as a punk rocker, I was a straight edge.
Right, straight edge.
I was straight edge then, because I came out of from my Jesus freak background. I came into that, and then I developed like two names. I had Johnny Divine, but then my other name was Johnny Christ because it started. Because I used to write, when I write my fanzine, I wrote under these different names or something. And people were like, yeah, John, what do you do? Next thing you're going to call yourself Jesus Christ. That's it, Johnny Christ. So it was like everybody either knew me as Johnny Divine or Johnny Christ.
That's so funny.
But I don't know. But it was just like, I just did things. There was people coming up to me and go, hey, can you do this or can you do that? And then I finally just kind of like got out of the whole rave scene because I didn't do drugs. And I wasn't a drug dealer, and that's where it was starting to head in towards the drugs and stuff. And I just, in the last show, the Tricks one was my last show, I think, and it was there was another rave going on at the time, and they were like, I think they kind of beat me up a little bit, but I had a lot of problems with my rave because. There were certain things that the guy didn't set up the way I wanted it to. Like when you walked into the place, what I wanted was things to be right there. So like when you walked up into the roller rink, it was right there. It was supposed to be right there. Now, well, he put all the lights out in the middle of the rink, and it just like that energy you just lose that energy. So it was just sort of kind of lackluster in a sense. But the thing is, each show I did, I learned something.
Right. And
that's like one of those things where I learned about pacing, how you have to create energy and you have to pace that energy.
Right.
You have to hit it.
Maintain it.
And then I quit, and then I think about a year later or something, I was just working. I was working at Borders, and I had done another radio show too. I did DIY radio on the Summit. On Saturdays. I did that for about 6 months and got bored because I was always fighting with my co-host because we had differences of opinions. And I started to go into wanting to do strange things where, like, we invite the guys from Carter Jones and talk about wood on the air, on the radio. I thought it would be funny because it would be like a lot of connotations, but it wasn't. Or one time I wanted to get my hair cut done on the air, have my the girl that used to cut my hair come and give me a haircut while we're doing the show. And they had it set up, but she backed out. But my favorite one is I was really good friends with Ivan Stang of the Subgenius Church, and I had interviewed him early in my fanzine years, and he happened to be here for the show, and so I had him on the air, and Ivan and I had a really good way I interview people is I don't go into with a set of questions. I just sort of start off with a conversation.
Yeah, it's like a casual thing.
Yeah, kind of like what Joe Rogan does.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have an idea of what I want to cover, but sometimes it could go totally different. And Ivan and I would just be playing off of each other, and we would get people calling and being really upset with it. So it was great, And then we did a Devival down here. And he was supposed to do a big one up in Cleveland, but he did a Devival with us down here. Right. That was really cool. It was really organic and homegrown, and it was fun. It was like one of those fun things. And that's how I started doing parties then. to raise money for our show, and then eventually a bunch of my friends who were into lounge music asked me to start doing parties. I'm like, okay. So like I started doing these lounge parties. My first one was the Spy versus Spy Martini party.
That's awesome.
Yeah, out in Kenmore, and then I was hanging out at the Highland Theater and got to know the owners there. And Ed Wood had just come out, and the guy was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about bringing. Let's see if we could throw a party around the Ed Wood, and I'll just bring the movie." And I'm like, no, why don't we just do this? I said, why don't we just do this? Why don't we actually get the films
Right.
that they talked about in the movie and bring those in? So we figured out how to get them. We got all 3 films. I got my friend who had a band called Mike Devine, who I always refer to him as my evil cousin. I got him to perform as King Dapper combo, and then we just made it into this movie marathon. It was like a Ed Wood movie marathon pajama party, and you had to come dressed wearing pajamas. That's or
so cool.
You know, nighties or an Agora sweater, you know, and you know, it was that, and I did it to where like it was this price, but if you wore this, it's this price, and if we brought like a canned good or something like that, it was even lower. So it was sort of like this tier thing. That's why I started doing that, to basically encourage people to dress up and stuff.
Right.
And then we did that, and then I did a New Year's party, but we did it 3 days after New Year's because New Year's fell on a Tuesday or Wednesday.
That's a little weird.
Yeah. So we decided to do it on the following Saturday. So we
Yep.
called it. We did it with an Andy Warhol theme, and then we went up and got a bunch of his art films on, but we couldn't get them through the museum, so we ended up finding them on discs or something, and we used a projector, like a TV projector, and projected on the screen. And then I had like 8 bands, and this is kind of where Fosnot comes in.
Right.
The whole thing I did with Fosnot is based on what I did to this party, whereas like we would just play Andy Warhol films, and then we had the bands play. Each band got like an hour to play, and it would be like different types of band. We would have a lounge band, we would have a jazz band, we would have a swing band, a rock band, like different types of
Like
bands.
everything.
Yeah, just everything. But the only requirement I had was that they had to play 2 Velvet Underground songs. They had to do an interpretation of a Velvet Underground song. And it was one of those things where people like had to bring, and I wanted to do it where people had to bring like a Brillo, you know, something that
Right.
like a soup can or something.
Yeah.
And then we donated all the soup stuff to the food bank.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was the kind of thing I was heading towards. And then we had food, and then I did the a Mardi Gras party, which was a rock and roll space age Mardi Gras party, and we just brought in these really stupid sci-fi films, and that's where I had Dink play Joy Electric, which was this Christian electronic band that was weird, and this rockabilly band, something Highway. I can't remember their something Highway, and they played, and that one I got to realize certain things that I wasn't able to do in the other show. But we had this people dressed up as candy things and come out and throw candies to the audience. But Joy Electric got pelted with candy when they were playing, or the guys from Dink got pelted with candy. So that was a great idea, but it didn't. It sort of like backfired.
Didn't pan out.
Yeah. And then I think the last show I did was I think Tiki. I did a Tiki Luau party, and again it was a friend of mine going, "Hey, I got this idea. I'm friends with the guys from Combustible Edison. They're going to be going on tour. They've always wanted to play the Kahiki down in Columbus. Let me take you down there." So he takes me down there, and I was just like, it was an old Polynesian restaurant, but it was like this huge restaurant, and the atmosphere was really cool. It was like they had like a rainforest staying over on one side. It was Chinese food, but it was like very theatrical.
Right.
So I ordered like this one chicken. Because I just wanted to see it because like I read about it. I'm like, I'm gonna try this. And he brought the chicken out and he lit it on fire. And I'm like,
Man,
oh, this is so
that
cool.
sounds so awesome.
Yeah. So we went up, we went and ate there, and then we asked for the manager, and I talked to the manager, and I told him my idea. Hey, we're thinking about, we want to do a party here. I wanted to do it in the main restaurant.
Right.
And they were like, no, we'll have it down. We have banquet rooms downstairs. Why don't we do it down in the banquet rooms? I said, okay, fine. So it was sort of like, that was planning it all out and everything. And my friend designed the flyer and everything. And this was one party I did everything wrong, but it worked in my favor.
Right.
So we developed this whole tier thing, again, where we were actually getting people from here to go down. So we ended up renting a bus. I lived in Highland Square at the time, and I had roommates that we used to throw house parties all the time. So we did like Boxing Day party, which was the day after Christmas, and it was a way for people just to come and drink and blow off steam.
Right.
Because you're just dealing with the stress of Christmas and everything. And we just did like little parties like that, but the Kihiki was the top thing for me. And like I said, I did everything in wrong in promoting it because I ended up promoting it up here. I never thought about promoting it down in Columbus. And then he, in turn, my friend was pretty like a whiz he was on the computer, on the internet more. At the time, I didn't really have access to the internet still. And in fact, one of the parties we did was like the same thing, where I got someone to do the internet thing for me. I had no idea if he did it or not, but he, I taught him. He was doing street stuff for different labels, so I said, hey, I'm going to teach. If you do this for me, come work with me. I'll show you how to do a party.
Right.
So that's how I taught him, and it like opened his eyes up to that. But the Kihiki was really cool. It worked out, and then it turned out that the Combustible Resident put it on their website. A local DJ down in Columbus read it on their website, and it became this secret party. So all of a sudden, this party becomes a secret party. I didn't even plan it that way. It was just I just didn't think about going down. Yeah, and then he had gotten people like all these people that were into tiki stuff. Were flying in to do with the thing. It was great. We designed it to where I was just a break even. It was just a break even. I wasn't going to make any money off of this event. Actually, I had someone here from University of Akron for the book delight.
Oh.
Came down on our thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I made him pay because I could. That's how tight it was. It was
Right.
that tight, and. I was just like, oh. At one point, I thought I was going to get hung out to dry. I was really scared. But that DJ down there found out and talked about it, and next thing I know, my phone's ringing off the hook. And what was happening is people were calling the Kihiki, and the manager was giving them my number, and everybody started calling me up here. So I just started making a list of everybody's names, and I ended up walking away with $2,500 extra that I wasn't even planning to make. But it was heading towards, the whole party thing was heading towards what I was wanting to do, where it was immersion of experience, where it was just, we have music, you had the bus ride, and the bus ride, a couple of members of the Combustible Resident was on the bus ride, we did games and stuff on the way down. And then we had this big banquet spread up there. And what sealed it for that night was the vice president of the Kihiki Corporation was so impressed, and the manager was so impressed of our crowd that he came down and did a aloha greeting
That's
to
so
everybody.
cool.
And it was like that was totally unplanned. It was awesome when he did that. It just took it to another level.
That's awesome.
Then other than that, then I just dropped out for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was working at Borders. I did corporate. I ended up in corporate sales, so I designed like little meet and greets and
Right.
stuff like that. And I won the program, and I worked with Carol Wintowski, the Ghost Whisperer. I became good friends with her. Helped her out with a lot of her stuff, and I designed like a lot of author writing, autographs and stuff like that.
Right.
And I worked with John Gorman. I met John Gorman during that show. I knew Michael Stanley. I just knew all these people, and I would get them all together under one thing. We just did this whole gathering thing where it was just not one author, but like several. They could come in and meet Michael Stanley. They could meet John Gorman, or they could meet the guy who used to do the Buzzard, all that stuff. You know. So, but then Borders bankrupt, and then I had to go work at Allstate. At one point, I was working like 80 hours a week. I didn't have time for anything.
That's rough.
COVID happened, and then my mom died, and then I got laid off from Allstate. But I was working like 3 jobs. I was working Allstate, I was working at Costco, and I was doing Amazon Flex. So I had no time for myself. I was like working 75 to 80 hours a week.
That's insane.
I was credit card debt. Everything was going against me. And then my mom died, and then my father slipped and fell, and we got him through rehab and everything like that, and tried to got him back on his feet. And then something happened, and I ended up having to go and I just went and moved into his house, and I just took care of my dad. Okay. And he was a vet, Korean War vet, and all that, and POW. So I was basically just taking care of him. I just more or less slept on the couch. He was in the kitchen. I had a chair thing set up for him, and I just took care of him for like, I don't know, 6 to 8 months or so, before he passed away. And so, but I got laid off during that time period. I quit working Amazon, doing Amazon Flex just to concentrate on him. Then I had to take a leave of absence. So when I came back, I inherited some money, and I heard about Fosnot down in West Virginia. There's a place called Helvetia, West Virginia. It's this little Swiss village in the middle of West Virginia. It's near Sutton, Flatwoods area, where the Flatwood Monster is.
I know the area.
Yeah.
I know all the rumors.
I love those. I went down there. I was like totally into it because I went to see the Flatwood Monster because I grew up on that.
Right.
And then the Bigfoot Museum's like a block over, and went in and hung out and talked to the lady there. It was awesome. And then I went to Point Pleasant for Mothman to the Mothman Museum. I couldn't go to the festival. But then I heard about Fosnot, and I'm like, what is this? And I started watching videos about it. So a year ago, I went to go, and I took my girlfriend at the time, but we got sidetracked. We got off on a dirt road, ended up saving some girl off the side of a mountain.
Wow.
She popped her tire off, and we were going to turn around, so she went ahead. So we went and followed her, and thankfully we followed her because she popped the tire off, and my girlfriend jumps out of the car and goes, "Oh, I'll help you change tires," and she goes running up the mountain. I'm like, "Oh God!" and the car's like this. She changed the tire, and I walked up the rest about 2/3 or more up the mountain, and I came back down. I'm like, we got to turn around. There's no way we're going to be able to go. So that's how I learned. But I learned about Fosnot. But we ended up getting there. But we didn't get there until like 9 o'clock.
Right.
Pretty much after everything was done. But the atmosphere and the town, the vibe I got from going there was so cool. And then we were able to grab some food. And by the time we got there, they were having the hoedown. So it was like the Appalachian part of the thing. They had already burned Old Man Winter, and they had like a parade. So they had this. You had the one town over here, where there was the restaurant, the community store, and the meeting hall. And the meeting hall is where they would have all the musicians get together and just do jam thing. And then you had then they gave lanterns and everything to everybody, and then they would go and burn the Old Man Winter, and then they would just have a hoedown, And but then it was cool because as we got talking to people, I found out there was a connection between Helvetia and Akron. Is that a lot of people from Helvetia had gone up to work in Akron for the rubber factories. And my grandfather had been a coal miner during that time period. He also did the same thing, came up, and then the rubber, I think he went for work for Goodyear, and then they hired him as a recruiter and sent him down. So I think my grandfather may have been one of the recruiters that came down to that town and recruited people out of that area.
Wow.
And brought people up here to work. So there's a connection between Helvetia and Akron. So when I first started doing Fosnot, I wanted to do like the sister, that Helvetia would be our sister town, and that's the idea. So I took a lot of the ideas that they did, and then I really got into studying Fosnot, the whole Swiss version of Fosnot.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I want to do that. So what I did here at the Hugs place was a microcosm of what I plan to go towards in the future. So this was just a microcosm of what I'm planning. What I'm seeing is that eventually this is going to become like a 3-day music festival, complete with parades, floats, everything. It's all about music, but it's about lights. The way they do in Switzerland, especially in Basel, they have like these floats that are lit up from the inside, and people do like these murals and stuff, but it's lit up from the inside, and so it's very, and they could be political in the sense that, or it's a way for people to express their misgivings towards the government and all that. It's a way of expressing it, and I like that idea. And then there's like these lanterns, and there's costumes and all that. And we didn't do too much with costumes this time. I was hoping to get people from the cosplay community and the furry community. I was trying to get people to come in, but this was my test. It was more or less to get myself out there. I learned a lot. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned a lot from this, but I thought the show came off really well.
I think so too.
It was like, it was everything I envisioned. I mean, a lot of stuff I didn't, like the drum line I got, I didn't get that until like 2 weeks prior.
Really?
Yeah, I was trying to get Warrensville Heights drum line, but and I was calling the guy, I was sending him emails, I was being a pest. I was trying to get University of Akron. Nobody was responding to me. Finally, he responded and said, "I'm sorry, we're doing Mardi Gras."
Oh.
And I'm like,
of course.
But then I don't know. I started digging more, and I tried to go back to Akron University, and I was trying high schools. I tried Norton. Someone recommended Norton. I tried my old school Revere, but nobody was responding. And then I saw this enrichment program down in Canton, and they had this drum line. So I called them, or I text them, and within a couple of days they texted me back, and they were like, "Yeah, we're interested in doing it."
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, oh my gosh! And I saw that they had a color line and a dance line, and I'm like, "Well, how much? Do you think I can get that?" And they go, "Yeah." And I'm, "Well, how much that's going to cost me?" "Well, $500." I'm like, "For the whole thing?" So I'm like, "Okay." So I got them. Faith and her husband Coswell.
Yeah.
A
couple
of wonders.
Yeah.
They're from the Catskills. I've been following them on Instagram. They're crazy tours. They just tour all over the place. I love her style of music. It's like very spacey and just ethereal.
I love it.
But it's rock and everything. And then Brian Elijah Smith was the country singer. I'm not into country, but I loved his style of music.
It's very folky.
Yeah, and very bluesy,
Yes.
and his voice was it was great. And a lot of people were there for him. And I was actually trying to get a bluegrass hip hop band called Gangster Grass. I spent like, because I was like 4 months out. I was trying to get this band. I spent like 2 months trying to get them, and finally figured out who their management company, because I was trying to get a hold of the tour guide. The tour manager wasn't getting a response. Well, I get a response, and then it goes. And then, so I finally got a hold of their management company, Figured out who their I had to dig. I was digging it.
Right.
Figured out who their management company. Got a hold of the management company, and they were, oh, well, they're going on a European tour. I'm like, ah. So, but then that led me to a band named Ashes, which is the folk band that's based here in Akron, with King Locust, and they're doing like progressive folk with hip hop.
Right.
And that was amazing. And my friend Mike went on to form Pokemaniacs out of Pittsburgh. I brought them up because he was like, well, we could do a 4-piece, or I'll do the whole, like, we do 8-piece. I'm like, give me the whole 8-piece band. So he brought that up. And then Al Mothersbaugh and his band, Massive Hot Dog Recall, a friend of mine recommended them to me, and I actually tried to go see them at the Porch Rock event, but I think it rained during that time period.
Yeah, something happened during
Yeah.
Porch Rockers.
Yeah, so I couldn't. Plus, you had to park like a mile away to get to where they were playing at.
It reminds me of Barberton Mumfest.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so that's like got those, and it was just one thing after another. It was like I get people saying, "Oh yeah, they'll help me with the artwork." Well, I ended up having to do. I used AI to generate the artwork and stuff.
Right.
I did all the layouts myself. I went down to the library just to learn to use the Adobe. I had some background in it, but the lady there was pretty cool. She goes, "Well, just use Canva." I'm like, "Okay."
Canva works.
Yeah, and
I
it was
can
perfect.
attest,
It was
yeah.
perfect for me. And
Canva
so
absolutely works.
yeah, so it was like I was like asking people, and I asked like 3. I had one guy that was one guy that was recommended to me. We talked, and then he just ghosted on me, and then I called my other friend, and he said, "No, I retired. I'm not doing it anymore." He recommended someone else, and then I reached out to another guy that had done my other shows, and he was interested, but it was just like it was taking too long. So I ended up having to do. I think I just sat down, like Ashley said, "Oh, you can use Canva," and I just sat down. I generated these images, and I just started doing it. I'm like, "Oh, this is real easy."
Canva's great.
Yeah.
I have a social media certificate here.
Yeah.
We learned Canva. That was one of the
Yeah.
programs we learned.
Yeah, but now I gotta learn this whole thing with marketing with Facebook and
Oh, good
Instagram
luck.
and
Yeah.
TikTok.
Gotta game the algorithm.
Algorithms, and that's what killed me was the algorithms, because
Yeah.
I just didn't have the following, and I literally made 5,000 flyers and like walked it. I went from Medina, I hit Medina, Wadsworth, Norton, Barberton, down to Canton, North Canton, Massillon, up here in Akron, and then all the way up to, I dropped 2,000, pretty much almost 2,000 flyers just in Kent.
Yeah. No, the reason we found out because of Fosnacht is because one of those flyers was at a nearby coffee shop.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one?
They just did I can't remember. I helped film there.
Okay.
It's like a few blocks from here. It's downtown.
Oh, the by the Twisted Tomato.
Yes.
Yeah, I dropped them off there. The guy was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or Evelyn's. There's Evelyn's.
Evelyn's. It was Evelyn's.
I love
Yeah, it was
Evelyn's. Evelyn's is like my favorite coffee shop because it's Vietnamese.
Yep.
And you get the banh mi. Oh, I love that place.
Yeah. No, that's how we Lowdown.
That's wild because
Caught wind of it.
I sent press releases to the Book Delight and everything. Here
Really?
Too. Yeah. I was like sending press releases.
Yeah.
I was doing way better this time around than I did with my previous shows. But it was just like trying to do it through Facebook, and it was just so. I'm gonna sit down and read, and King Locust is gonna sit down and walk me through. He was like, I mean, I worked my butt off on this, but it was like, he says you gotta use social media more.
Yeah.
And I was familiar. I had been on TikTok, so I was trying to spread, but my TikTok goes to China. So
Yeah.
most of the time. So I don't have a lot of people in this area. And Instagram's the same thing, it's just not China, but it's just I just didn't have that going for me at the
Right.
time. So I'll do better next year.
Well, let's talk about next year.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about kind of? I mean, I don't. I'm assuming you don't have a ton of plans in concrete in
Oh,
motion. But-
I don't have concrete, but it's going to fall February 14th,
Okay.
2026. I don't have a place yet, but I am scouting out places right now. I just got approached by Rialto Theater
Oh,
in
yeah, in Kenmore.
Kenmore. So I'm going to be doing other festivals there. Basically, some of the things I want to do, I'm going to do there to build the following. Because one of the things I always learned when I started doing parties, you have to start small and then you just build.
Yes, build up.
Yeah, and this one I just sort of like jumped in the middle and just did it. So this one will be next year. I'm not sure if it's going to be downtown Akron. I've already started. I was literally the next day I was already scouting for places.
That's wild.
Yeah, so I have a couple places in mind. There's like 3 different places right now. Peninsula, Barberton, and downtown Akron. I'm not sure if I want to go back to the space. The space was great, but it was a little expensive.
Yeah.
It cost me a lot of money for that space, but it was a good. It was a good thing. And the other band, Highland Squares,
Yeah.
they're a jam band. That's my piano teacher's band.
Really?
Yeah, I still take piano lessons, but yeah, it was his band. So I was trying to do the same thing as they do down in Helvetia. I want this jam band thing going.
Right.
And so I'm already trying to figure out, okay, I want to do it to where people can go and jam, but they'll have to, maybe if they don't want to do the other thing and they just want to go and jam for the night, have it set up somewhere where they can just go there and jam. And we can't do bonfires. So that's why we ended up with the
ice sculpture.
the ice sculpture, and that actually came about because I was doing AI, and it was helping me do some things, and I kept saying, "Oh, Fosnot with ice sculptures and Krampus," and I'm like, "No," because I had written a letter to the Ohio Krampus Society because I'm working on a Krampus festival,
Okay.
and I'm doing also a Day of the Dead festival,
Okay.
which it's going to be a 2-day festival. I turned my plans in. I can't exactly tell you, but it is going to be at a cemetery. That's the goal.
All right, well, if you email me.
Oh, I will.
I
I definitely will.
If it's happening around Halloween, I will probably still.
It'll be happening November 1st and 2nd.
Yeah, we can cover that.
So we're gonna
absolutely.
the cemetery. I turned in this 3-4 page proposal along with the schedule of the whole thing. I turned this whole thing into them. I had been trying to get a hold of this guy for like over a year.
Wow.
And then one day I walked in. I was thinking, this is while I was doing FOSNA. I decided just to go down. I had done the proposal in the middle of everything, and I went down and presented to give it to the secretary. Well, he answers the door. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to. He goes, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. And so I handed the whole thing over to him, and because I had talked to the maintenance staff and the secretary, and they were like really into it. They thought it was a great idea to have it at the cemetery.
Right.
And the reason I wanted to have it at the cemetery is the same thing as it's Fosnot, is it's the presence of the space.
Right.
And the historical elements of it. It's my festivals are so many layers of things. It's educational. I want it to be educational, but I also want to promote the different groups in Akron,
Right.
like the Historical Society, people that would do their own thing, but I'm trying to collaborate with a bunch of different groups and stuff. The music, artists. I'm trying to reach out to the schools and colleges with the Spanish teachers, the art teachers, to encourage them to come in and bring things in to, even the theater, if they could do theater type stuff. I was looking at puppet shows at one point for Fastnacht. But I actually had a friend of mine who was a poetry, who did poetry, and his portrait was really cool because he would flash it up on the walls and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's what I wanted, but I scared him away because he thought I wanted. I was like, oh, this is really cool, and I was showing him all this stuff, and then he was just kind of like, I don't know if I'm the guy for you. And I'm like, you are the guy. But I'm trying to show you this. I'm trying to show you what they are doing. So, but yeah, so I'm doing Day of the Dead. The second day is going to be kite flying like they do in Guatemala.
Okay.
In fact, King Locust and I are going to work together on that, and I'm going to use that as a way of raising money for his group, which he works for the Boys Club, and he works in the projects in this area, and we're trying to encourage the kids to get involved, and I would love to work with local graffiti artists. I'm just trying to reach out to many different groups and people that have artwork and stuff have artwork where you don't go to a gallery. You can interact with it right there. It's a different whole. I'm trying to do a whole different thing.
Absolutely.
So, it's just that's what I'm planning to do with Fastnacht next year. It's going to be bigger. Hopefully, more people. but it's like I'll have the algorithms worked out by that time,
yeah.
and I don't know. It's fun. I like doing it. It's stressful, but it's the right kind of stress I like to work with. So
it's a challenge.
yeah, but that's the fun part of it. Is to be able to do it and see it come about.
Right.
I mean, I got to see things that I planned, and to see that in action, and how it worked, and made it to where, there's a lot of influence of the rave scene. I was doing at Fastnacht, where I kept the music going constantly.
Absolutely. It was
like
a lot of quiet moments.
Yeah, and it was just to kind of keep it going, and the food was the other aspect of it. I brought in people that I knew that I've eaten their food and really wanted to support them, so I invited them to come and do the show. The one lady that came in and some beauty products, I ran into her while I was eating, and so yeah, she goes, "Can I come and sell?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" I'm like, "Come down." I don't know if it's going to sell anything, but yeah, come down. But that's another, that venture. I'm going to have vendors and all that stuff as well. But I'm hoping that within the next year I'll be doing workshops. So we're going to do things like how to make your own lanterns. I'm going to move it towards what this whole. It's going to become a 3-day music festival.
Right.
Basically, I say it's a music festival, but it's Fastnacht, but the emphasis is on music. And I want to have a wide variety of music, not just, that's what I want to start working with the universities, music departments and stuff like that, or things like that.
Right.
Art departments, whatever I can, to kind of encourage people to come and participate and express, provide them a space to express themselves in, and if whatever it is they do. I would love to see these big lit floats and stuff, or these lanterns.
Right.
I want people to create stuff and bring it, or even costumes and stuff. I want more costumes and masquerade type stuff. That's what I want. They do it down in Helvetia, and the reason why they got so popular is because they Fallout, the game.
Fallout 76.
Yeah, and Fallout. That's why Point Pleasant, the Mothman's festival, is so big, and their festival is big because of Fallout. And so there's a lot of people who go there because of Fallout. I don't think we're going to have Fallout here, but it would be fun if it did happen.
Nice.
Yeah, but I wanted to make it different from what they're doing down there, and the whole ice sculpture thing where we're burning it and then stuff like that. That was like, this is our version of it.
Right.
We just have to work within the parameters of what the law allows us to. So, but then there's going to be other festivals. So that's like Day of the Dead. I'm going to do Krampus. I'm working on a smaller version of Brouhaha.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is a witches, wizards, and warlock brouhaha. I've already envisioned it as a full-scale festival, but after this, I think I'm going to start small, do it at the Rialto, and then build it. I'm going to grow festivals out of the Rialto.
Rialto's a good place to do
Yeah,
it.
it's
Really
a
good
beautiful
place.
space.
Absolutely.
Beautiful space. So it's like, I've already worked up a bunch of proposals for them. Um, they were excited because when I started talking to them before the show, they were like, we got to work with you. And then at the show, they were like, we got to get together and talk more. So it's cool. It's like, it's given me a base of operations to work out of, and maybe my approach should be, I try to go to these people with the ideas, but maybe my approach should be just to do it and let it grow and let them come to me.
Absolutely.
I think that's what I'm going to have to do eventually.